Hello, good afternoon, folks. Thank you for tuning in. This is the fifth episode of the communal, and yeah, we took a break last week. We needed a break. It's good to have a break, and so we're back this Sunday. Today we have Gashi Isa. We were supposed to also have Sarah Jama. I don't want anyone sending us messages about false advertisement. So, unfortunately, Sarah couldn't join us, and we are hoping that maybe Sarah will be able to join next week. And next week, we have a guest, a very interesting guest, and I think people will learn a lot from that guest. But I'll let you know about the guest for next week later on at the end of the show today. So we have Gashi. We're going to be talking about Black liberation and radical love. Those things have different ways it's expressed differently in different forms. So today we want to hear those expressions and forms from Gashi, and also learn about some of the work that you've been doing here in Hamilton. I think when we talk about community leaders, builders, black women that have been holding this city together. We don't explicitly mention who those black women leaders are. So I think it's important to, put a name to the face, and also we need to acknowledge the work that you have been doing along with others. So can you start us off by giving us a quick background, and then you can start by talking about what Black liberation means to you.
Okay. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here. I would say um, a quick background on who I am. I always start by saying, and this is actually like really important and integral to who I am, that I grew up and still live in a poor community, um, and that in itself, I think, has really transformed my politics. And I'm also an older sister that is also foundational, I think, to my politics. I live in a family with like a single parent, again, that also transforms my politics. And yeah, I'm going into my fifth year at McMaster. I'm studying life sciences. Um, and yeah, I've been organizing since I was 17 in high school, um, kind of around Islamophobia, anti-Blackness, policing in schools, through now Hamilton Students for Justice. And now I'm just, yeah, I just organize in the city with a bunch of other cool people. What Black liberation means to me, I think, and we could talk about this later, like Black liberation means I think Black liberation means a deep sense of love. I think that we can only be free once we learn to love our communities. Because yes, um, being free means that we have to tear stuff down. It also means though that we have to build things, and I think you can only really build things through a sense of love for your community. That's what I've learned, kind of living in city housing, is that we love each other in a way that the state will never love us. Um, and that's been, yeah, foundational to my politics.
Can you expand more on this attribute of love and what that means, right? Like, that four-letter word brings up different things, right? So what kind of love are you talking about? Can you give us like some material examples so that we are not talking about it in a romanticized excuse that link there, but you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like what do you mean by, you know the state will never love us the way we love us and should, and how we should be loving our community. So can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think you're right. Love is a very like now romantic notion, and also it's very feminized. But what I mean by love is I mean radical love. I mean love as a politic. And to me, love is mutual aid. Love is showing up on the streets. Love is organizing. Love is also tearing statues down. For me, like I think that there's this misconception that that movements are sustained by anger. part of it Part of it is anger is actually very important, but it's also sustained by love. I care for my community so much so that I want to see us free and I want to see us thriving. And so the work that we put into this city and to our community is grounded in love, way more than anger at politicians or at leaders or at systems. It's more that I love us so much that I don't think that we should go through this. For me, like, and we can talk about this further, like about the Mountain Mutual Aid network, but um, mutual aid is a form of love. Like, I grew up seeing people, uh, like in my community, we trade food all the time. If someone doesn't have groceries, then we got you, and then someone will have us back. That to me is a deep sense of love, and I learn it from poverty. I learn it from my blackness. I learn it from, I think, my culture. But to me, that is a deep sense of love that we take care of each other better than any system can. Um, I see it in the way that we show up for each other in terms of like different struggles. Like I think of Black and Indigenous solidarity. That is a deep sense of love. Um, yeah.
Mhm. So, you mentioned the Mountain Mutual Aid. Can you give us an update of what's happening with it and how that has been, fostering a sense of love and community on the mountain, Hamilton Mountain?
Yes. So we recently launched the Mountain Mutual Aid Network. Um, this group, as you know, super grassroots, very grassroots. We accept donations and from the community. We have requests every week, and then we send out kits based on it, on the donations that we have. And people fill out a form to request food kits. And so in the kits, there's like pasta, canned goods, produce now, thanks to Roots to Justice, and we kind of send that out. Um, and it's been going on for a couple of weeks now. I think it's been really successful. It's very grassroots, which is actually really beautiful in a sense. Um, and yeah, to me, this is what love looks like. It's community helping community, and not in like a charity based way, because I think that we learned that from oppressors, in a way that is like mutual. So mutual aid is, I provide this food to you, and in some sense we will also, I don't know, be able to help each other. Like, I remember, I think it was last week, someone um, requested for a food kit, but also was like, I have some stuff that I want to donate to. To me, that is a sense of like like deep sense mutual aid. Is something that I grew up with, where poor people give poor people other things. Um, to me, that is fostering a sense of love. Like, Hamilton Mountain is very unique because there are really poor areas and there are really rich areas, and somehow we are all cohabitating together. I live on the mountain, and so, what would it look like to use our resources to develop a deep sense of connection amongst each other? And again, not in a savory, charity-based way, but in a loving, caring way, in a I want to see you free kind of way. And to me, that's love. There's no other way to put it. And I think that, yeah, the Mountain Mutual Aid is fostering that. It's been really cool to be a part of this, especially because nothing really happens on the mountain. And so, yeah, we're also accepting donations every Wednesday.
That's a good one right there. That's a nice transition. Yeah,
Yep.
so yeah, the I think I'm also part of it. I have to make that known. And so yeah, I think you're right. It's community taking care of community in different ways, and building a sense of relationship and trust, right? Because what happens is we all in this setup, in a settler colonial setup, there's this idea that everybody should be their own individual and their own family. As long as they pay their taxes, they're fine, right? But then some of the things you've talked about try to, dispel those myths, especially when we're on stolen land, and we've seen how the creation of this country was about making it an individualized setup for people to pay taxes and then leave everyone else behind, right?
Mm, yep,
Yeah.
yep. It's yeah, and that's what I mean. Like that sense of community, that sense of love for the community is like it's so unique and it's actually very difficult to foster. And I think yeah, it's been very cool to see that at the Mountain Mutual Aid Network. Again, especially on the mountain when things seem so disparate and separate, to like see that sense of community forming is like in real time is very beautiful.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Now when we talk about the mountain, right, we are also talking about youth that also don't feel safe in schools, right? I know of the St. Thomas More High School that is highly a highly racialized high school. Most people think about Cathedral, but STM is highly racialized. If you talk about public school, McNabb, same thing. So you and a number of your colleagues have been at the forefront of talking about the safety of black and racialized students, high school and even elementary, um, with respect to how black youth are unsafe in school. So can you talk about that too, and kind of like link it to what we are seeing right now, as people reckon with systemic racism, Islamophobia, xenophobia in Canada and Hamilton.
Yeah. I think like yeah, just recently in Ancaster we saw like a very violent Islamophobic attack, an attempted attack on someone that could have really jeopardized um, the lives of two Muslim women. And in hearing that attack, I think a lot of people were surprised. I wasn't. And I know a lot of Muslims weren't. I know a lot of students weren't because we actually see that also materially in our school. Um, yeah, I, along with a bunch of other folks, like really struggled in high school, and we started organizing. Like I said, I organized when I was 17 because we didn't have access to prayer space as Muslims because teachers were actively racist, like and not in like a, I think sometimes people dismiss it in saying that systemic racism isn't violent. It's actually very violent and it's actually very overt. um, and we've had to experience that continuously. I went to Westdale. I know that folks at STM. I have family members who went to St. Thomas More. I know that that is a highly racialized school with a white teacher population. Um, and like what we saw was that there was policing in school. We saw active streaming in schools where students would be streamed into lower classes. We would see overt racism from teachers. Um, yeah, sorry, that's my smoke alarm.
Is it is it a cooking alarm, or there's
I,
an actual fire?
it's lunchtime. That's funny. Um, yeah. Okay, there you go. Um, and so, yeah, I think a lot of students, we faced a lot of systemic racism. And what happened is that we worked for 4 years, terminated the police liaison program, but the the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board, the Catholic District School Board, I'm sure even the French School Board in Hamilton are deeply, deeply racist. And I think that recently we've really reckoned with it. I've seen how the community has shown up for students, but like that is a form of trauma and racism that is so deep rooted in students. I still carry it with me, um, and so like yeah, doing that work was a lot. It was also very I don't know. I think it stole our youth a little bit. That kind of organizing, to have to organize that young, um, alone sometimes was really hard. And I think about all the students who continuously have to do that and who are doing it now. Um, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough, yeah. Uh and this is the failure of institutions, right? Where, you're saying years ago this is what happened and continues to happen, right? Without real actions being taking place. And now it's on students to organize and expose racist and white supremacist trustees who
hmm
refuse to even acknowledge the pain and violence that they participated in, right? So
yeah,
yeah, it is tough. It just shows how messed up this country is and this city is, right? We have the number one hate crimes per capita in the whole country, and everybody, once these incidents happen, everybody's like, there's no hate in Hamilton. Yet each and every day students are faced with various forms of hate, discrimination, and others. So yeah, it is tough. But again, you you are having that politic of, if we truly want to engage in love, then we have to do this work, right? We
yeah,
have to do it at all costs because of the next generation and the people to follow.
hmm
So now, how do we get to eliminating or removing policing in schools and applying that model to the society? Uh,
mm,
quote unquote, defund HPS and calls for defunding of police and disarming, demilitarizing police departments across Canada and in North America.
yeah. I think like all of these threads are connected. I think mutual aid is connected to the fight for students, and it's also connected to the fight to defund, disarm, and dismantle policing. Like what we saw even in high school is that kids were carted like in hallways in their own schools. We met like students who were falsely arrested, students who were searched because they had an EpiPen, like black children, like babies, like not even adults yet, are being criminalized. And these things are like, these are my cousins, this is my family, this is my kin at this point, like these are people that I see in myself, and in my family. um, and so this is happening consistently in schools, but it's also happening around housing complexes, subsidized housing like mine. It's happening where youth hang out in parks. It's happening outside mosques. It's happening continuously to Black children and to racialized children. And even more broadly, like the police, the police criminalize almost every vulnerable person. People who are houseless and homeless, which is also connected to people who are racialized, are being policed. Their encampments are being tore down, which again we could talk about later. But like I think in this politic of love, we realize that armed police officers don't love us. They don't care for us. They don't care for our communities. They don't care for the sustainability of our communities. They want to police us. They want to put us in jail. They want to criminalize us. And they actually make money off of it. They make $100,000 a year, while community agencies that actually help our don't even make don't even make enough money as one single police officer a year. Um, and so, to me, very clearly, in my politic of radical love, defunding the police is a very clear and obvious next step. We don't need what $171 million a year for a police service to come. In my community, they knocked on doors, they canvassed on doors because kids were huddling and they were afraid that it was going to escalate into beef. They ran a background check on every kid in my community. Like these are the children I've watched grow up in front of my own eyes, and this happens, I know for a fact, in every part and every facet of our lives. And so, um, yeah, I think, to me, defunding the police is a very logical step. And I know that the Hamilton community has really rallied behind us. Like, there's like 5,000 people who have emailed their counselors and signed on to stuff. We had a 2-week long protest outside of City Hall. People showed up. We fed like over 7,000 people. Like, to me, that is a politic of love. And I can even see how Hamilton is rallying around us too, which is like beautiful and brave. Um, and I think like we're in such a strong, such a particular political moment in history that I think like I'm so optimistic. I'm even not even hopeful, I'm sure even that we're gonna defund the police. It's just a question of when. Yeah.
Hmm. You touched on a number of intersecting points there, right? And one thing I always say is that the idea of black liberation, which you've explained in multiple ways, is also inclusive of breaking the shackles of poverty that
Mhm.
many low income and moderate income white communities also face, right? We're not just talking about, the descriptor of black in front of liberation doesn't necessarily mean we're talking about just black people. We're
Yes.
talking about an unraveling of the systems that allow for all of these colonial pressures on indigenous communities, black folk, white folks as well. Because even when you talk about housing too,
Mhm.
yeah, expand on the encampment situation here in Hamilton, because I think you are also at the center of some of the important advocacy and work that now residents are beginning to see, um, that we have a housing issue. And if Sarah Jama was here, she probably would have interjected and said free housing. So can you shed light on that piece?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and even on the point of free housing, to connect it back to policing, how is the police service getting $171 million when we can house community members for free? Each police officer gets around $100,000 a year. That is enough to house many people. Um, and what we see through the Hamilton Encampment Support Network is that the house population in Hamilton is growing. Like, we are one of the most unaffordable cities in North America, above New York, above LA. Um, this is like, it's concerning, and we see it on the ground how encampments are growing. And to me, like, I see encampments in Hamilton. We saw encampments, for example, at Ferguson last year, a very large encampment on Ferguson Street with around like 80 people, and they had to be there because the this world is ableist. This world is um, classist, and we have no adequate housing, no social benefits. And what happens is people are on the ground. But I also saw how they took care of each other, how they also how people on the ground build a sense of community. And I don't say this lightly. I say this as someone who like has family who's experienced houselessness, who like I've in my life experienced like precarious housing. Like, I know how people show up for their community. And I also saw how the same police service tore down ruthlessly that encampment. in the cold and in the rain, and I see how they tear encampments down continuously, almost every day. Like in Toronto, we saw what happened in Trinity Bellwoods, which was horrifying. But this happens in a small scale in Hamilton, I would say multiple times a week. And people are being pushed, but where are they going to go? And to me, like, it shows the city and this government and this world's uh, lack of care, um, like disdain, even hate for people who are poor, people who are disabled, people who are racialized. We are the victims of their oppression and also the victims of their aggression too. Um, yeah,
Can you repeat that one more? That
are the victims of their oppression and their aggression. uh, yeah, but the Hamilton Encampment Support Network actually started out of Freedom Camp, which was a defund 2 week long protest, because through defund we were able to connect housing and defunding the police. So we want to defund the police and invest that money into free housing, because housing is a human right and it's a necessity. Um, and yeah, so then Hamilton Encampment Support Network was kind of born out of that action. And yeah, it's also grounded in a sense of mutual aid. It's not in a savory sense. We're not going into encampments to save people from poverty, because who are we to do that? We're kind of supporting people's uh, like supporting people, helping folks advocate, but it's being guided by people who live on the ground. Um, yeah, yeah, it's something that again, like, is actually very beautiful to see being built, and to see the amount of people that are involved, the amount of people that are willing to volunteer, um, and yeah, I think like yeah, it's been very cool to see this like kind of work grow in Hamilton specifically, um, and to see all of these like connections being built too.
you mentioned Ferguson, and I wanted to state that Hamilton sometimes is at the forefront of the most oppressive um, behavior towards racialized communities and poor communities. Ferguson happened before what happened in Toronto,
Hmm.
and LA is also experiencing a rise in encampments. And I think this past summer, there was also a number of people that were attacked by police in an LA park that during the pandemic, most houseless folks were living, right? So if you think about how Ferguson happened before all of this, you can see that Hamilton, as much as is quote unquote small compared to Toronto or LA, Montreal, what have you, the as you said, the amount of disdain where yeah, black, racialized, low income, moderate income folks are treated with so much disdain. And I believe it was the Encampment Support Network that this week or last week found out that now we have former RCMP
Yep.
um, officers and ex-police officers terrorizing tenants as part of a rental eviction practice, right? So, you know, yeah, you are definitely right that Hamilton is very, 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 very oppressive.
Yep.
And it's no doubt that we have hate crimes, we have a housing crisis. Um, you know, we can't even talk about indigenous rights and sovereignty, right? Like these things kind of make sense, right?
Hmm.
So talking about disdain for racialized communities, can you tell us what happened at at Freedom Camp where you know Black, racialized queer youth took over City Hall to ask for free housing, asked the mayor to come down and other elected officials. That didn't happen. But then one of the organizers were charged. And what's an update on that? I know that's going to give you a long runway, but can you section
Yeah.
that off for us?
Yes, of course. I first want to like speak to what Freedom Camp was and why we felt like it was necessary to be down there. Again, like especially after Ferguson, like we saw how much the city hates, and I would use hate strongly, like poor people, people of color, people with disabilities, and we saw how much they inflate policing. And like you said, like policing are, I would say, at the forefront of almost every violent thing that is happening in Hamilton, whether that be evictions, rent evictions, whether that is encampment teardowns, whether that is police brutality and carding. And we firmly believe that we do, I think our community actually said that we actually don't want this anymore. We want to invest in our community instead of investing in policing. And so then we felt that it was a necessary thing for our survival, for our community, um, to camp outside of City Hall for 2 weeks, to demand that not only the mayor, but all levels of government defund police and invest in housing. Um, and throughout Freedom Camp, like we we fed over 7,000 people. We existed together. We followed COVID protocols strictly. Um, we also like fostered again like a deep sense of love and connection for our community, because even more than the mayor not showing up, like even more than whatever, like this was not even about the mayor. It was about us and our community and our love for our community. And we were like extremely criminalized. We were arrested, and Sarah, at Freedom Camp, was ticketed with a ticket that is up to $100,000, and potential incarceration too. Like this is serious for something that was necessary for the safety of our community, and for something that was safe too. And what we saw later, this like just recently, is Palestinian organizers also being ticketed with the same charge, so $100,000 in potential incarceration. And to me, and to all of us, this is a direct attack on Black and racialized organizers. We love our community so much. Palestinians love their community even across the ocean. Like this is about love and care, and the state is weaponizing that. It is threatening incarceration to Black and racialized people. Like that is extremely violent. And so we started this Drop the Charges campaign because it is not fair that Black and racialized people who are seeking freedom are being charged. And this is like a long-standing tactic of the government and of the state, to incarcerate us. Um, and so, yeah, we've partnered up with McMaster SPHR, and we are running a joint campaign to drop the charges. We are asking folks to donate to the legal fund because this is going to be like a long legal fight. And yeah, we're saying no to this intimidation. We're saying no to this harassment, and we're saying no to this criminalization because it is not fair. It is absolutely unfair that as people who are seeking freedom in a politic that is grounded in love, like we were likened to terrorists. We were called the most dangerous group in Hamilton. The state is afraid of us, and this is a symptom of their fear. And we're not going to let that shake us. And so there's Sarah, Wallet, and Hashid, who are collectively fighting these tickets. So again, we're asking people to donate. We're asking people to. There's a phones app happening on July 20th because that's the first. That's when the court dates start, for the McMaster SBHR folks. And then in September again, that's when Sarah's second court date is. But it's actually extremely violent and scary. And this is Hamilton Police and the city of Hamilton that are doing this, again, to youth, to young people. Yeah, it's so unfair.
Yeah, so we've put the information in the chat. So drop the charges amount. The link is there. The first link is for people that have credit cards. If you don't have a credit card, you can send an e-transfer to info@dfundhps.com. And if you are listening right now, we gotta put a pause right here. If you're listening right now, the least you can do is send $10, right now. And if you are listening with somebody, uh encourage them to also uh, uh um, send an e-transfer, do a donation. As Gashia said, when community is fighting for with um people to address immediate needs, and they are now uh, being over policed and criminalized, and now even being sent to the thought of potential incarceration. We have to realize that this is it's not even. I know Gashi said it's not fair, but it doesn't even live up to moral integrity, right?
Mm,
Like,
mm,
so those that are watching right now, I am asking you to send, if it's $10, if it's $20, even if it's $2, right? Send in a donation right now. I believe the first link that I sent, they're about they've raised about 13,387, and they've had 251 contributors that have contributed to fund the fight. So this is your opportunity to also join the fight. $10. If you have even 100, that's fine. They'll take it. So any bid count. So please, please, I know we're doing this live stream, but if you're listening right now, I'm talking to you. In TV, they say, "Where's the camera?" I'm looking right at you. Please, please, please send in a donation. You can send an e-transfer to info@defundhps.com. If you have a credit card, you can follow the first link, fundraiser.com. I have the link in there, so you can click on that and join to fund the fight, because this is going to be a long, long, long fight, and people can be sent to jail or fined when they are asking for free housing, when we know we're living in a housing crisis, right? So please do that. Thank you very much if you are already doing it as we speak. And for those of you that are going to watch this on YouTube later, that you have your opportunity to support financially as well. So I just want to say thank you for doing that. Now, back to Gashi. That was the public service announcement. Now, back to Gashi. So, you know, um can you wrap all of this up for us in terms of Black liberation and radical love and where we go from here, right?
mm.
Um, yeah, wrap it all up for us.
Okay. Okay. Um, yeah, I think when it comes to the fight of Black liberation, like you said, this is a liberation for all people. Because I think when you critique anti Blackness, you also critique poverty and capitalism and policing and housing. Um, I think like what we see in Hamilton is like, I don't know, I think we see something unique. And we see like such an interconnected and holistic fight for liberation. And I would say, you know, like what we're seeing in Hamilton is the active criminalization of organizers like Sarah, Willa, and Hashid. Um, and we're seeing like active intimidation of people who live in encampments, of students, um, and also people who live in precarious housing. Um, but we're also seeing like something so beautiful, which is that like community is building something really, really sustainable and holistic, like the Mountain Mutual Aid Network, like HESN, like Defund, like Roots to Justice too. Like shout out to Roots to Justice for continuously providing food to people all the time. Um, like there are so many beautiful things being built in Hamilton, and I see this as like such a beautiful collective movement. Um, and again, like I think when people think about organizing or activism, they think about tearing things down. And tearing things down is actually very important. We have to tear statues down, we have to tear systems down, we have to remake it. But I also think what I'm learning through this work and through all the interconnected work is that it's almost just as important to build things and to build things for ourselves and to ground that also in a sense of love. Um, and to me, like, what sustains me the most is the love, the affection, the care that I have for my community. And it is something that I grow continuously. Um, and I hope that people in the community are also growing that too, because I think the love that we have for each other is radical. And I hope we honor that radicalness by supporting groups in Hamilton, by supporting Defund, the Drop the Charges campaign. That is also a sense of love for the organizers who put themselves at the forefront of this work, because this work is tiring and this work is dangerous. Um, and so, yeah, I guess a great way to wrap this up is that, like, we do this because we love and care for our community. And I hope that our community also shows love back um, by supporting these initiatives. Um, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. I'm going to ask you one more question before we get into another topic that I think is also of grave importance. Is, Hamilton has been known to do some active uh, resistance to some issues. When we think, it goes all the way back to the Red Hill Valley Express,
Hmm.
and all the other things that have happened. Um, there's a Stop the Sprawl campaign right now, and I think one thing that you have done um, is also connected to other activists or other issues that are happening across the city. Even with COVID, when we had three outbreaks in apartment buildings, I mean, Root for Justice showed up, right?
Yeah.
And even the RCMP situation, Acorn was also there to
Hmm.
work together with Encampment Support Network, right? So I think one thing that you have done is also uh, raise our antennas up to connecting what we are doing to other communities and try and figure out a way to talk about some of the differences and some of the ideologies that we might have, but at the core of it is serving the community and working with the community, right? So can you clean that up a little for us?
Yeah, I think um, like on council, what we see is like people who have been there for like upwards of 30 years, and like the work that they do is actually not for any care of the community. They don't care about the community. They don't listen to community. Like there are people in power, people who are elected, trustees, for example, do not care for their students. In fact, they harm their students, as what we've seen with like former trustee Ahona Mehdi. And so, like for me, at the core of our work, I think sometimes we 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 look up to power. What I'm trying to say is like you said, caring for our community and focusing our community specifically is actually what I think uh, will bring us to liberation, because our struggles are interconnected. Um, our struggles are actually deeply interconnected. And again, like what I see in Hamilton is that we are actually able to link arms in this fight. And so, like when we were, calling last summer for the defunding of the police, which we still are, there a bunch of organizations signed onto it in Hamilton because it is connected to. The opioid crisis. It is connected to youth centers who have signed on too. That is also connected to it. It is connected to teaching too. Like, I don't know, the fight is interconnected, and I think the more we see it, um, I think the easier the fight becomes. Um, yeah, yeah. I think that like sometimes we defer to authority to be able to fix these things. But what would it look like to also to build a sense of 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 strength, a sense of knowing in ourselves. Like I think about like the work that Hamilton Students for Justice does, and it's like instead of like, and I was caught up in this a lot when I was younger. It's like we'd meet with the director, and we would ask the director for things, and then we'd sit in another meeting with the director, and then another. But then I think we quickly found out that like actually equipping students with knowledge about what racism looks like, empowering them, emboldening them to tune into what they already know is actually way more powerful than any meeting with any system leader. And I think that that's what we're doing in Hamilton is that we're building a sense of power and knowledge, like a lexicon amongst each other, so that like we'll be able to grow and expand and even maybe take over council and take over the trustee board and whatever. But it has to start amongst each other. Because there is power within us, it's just untapped. And so, what would it look like to uncover that power? Yeah.
Yeah, that's some deep stuff right there. That's yeah, that's some deep stuff. Um Having said that, you made a line, and I think it's going to stick with me, and I'll have to use it, right? Because we gotta start sharing what other people are saying. We are victims of the oppression and aggression. I'm gonna use that. So, you know, that's like a line that speaks to the experiences of black racialized people with poverty, people with disabilities, etc., etc. But you are also in tune with how poetry and the arts has kind of informed some of your ideas and thoughts politically, and can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because I think sometimes, you know we do work in the community, but we forget to talk about the readings and writings that kind of help us understand what we are doing, and
Hmm.
also maybe even push us a little bit um into figuring out a future for us that is livable, sustainable, that we can thrive. So
Yes.
poetry, arts, words, give us the
Yes.
rundown.
Yes. I love poetry. I read a lot of poetry. I used to write too. I think how I actually got into organizing, which is funny, is that I think when I was like 16, 17, I read a poem at a rally that the Womanists and Sarah Jama organized. And that's kind of how I got sucked into things. And so I think to me, poetry is like my introduction to organizing. It is also, I think to me, a form of theory too. It is a way for me to also be in tune with who I am and what I know. I have this like Audre Lorde quote, and she says, "The white fathers told us I think, therefore I am, and the black goddess within us, the poet, whispers in our dreams, I feel, therefore I can be free." And I think to me, like what poetry does is that it allows us to dissect and also distill particular feelings, because I think that as an organizer your intuition is important. um, and I think that like poetry builds on our intuition. I think the best organizers were also poets. Assad is a poet. We have nothing to lose but our chains. Like that is like that is her poetry. And I think that it helps us make sense of this disorganized and upside down world. um, and I also think it's a way for us to get in tune with how we feel, because that is also important. It's important to our work. Like I think of like almost every civil rights movement. I think of the Panthers and how they used art to actually fund their movement. And I think Yeah, I think like the more and more I read poetry and the more I grow, the more I realize how it informs who I am. I think like poetry, writing poetry, reading poetry is also a sense of mindfulness. And I think we need that. It builds a sense of intimacy. I think it teaches me how to love because, yes, there's this radical notion of love, but there's also this interpersonal form of love too that I think we have to build. And I think I understand it best through poetry. I think my favorite poems are like love poems. I recently read this book called Revolutionary Petunias by Alice Walker, and she talks about how even in the face of arrest or in the face of like firing bullets, activists still maintain love for each other, and how revolutionary is that? Um, yeah, I think that poetry is so crucial to our work, and it helps me at least make sense of this fight. Um, Yeah, and one day I want to make it accessible to a lot of people.
So, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Do you have a favorite stanza that you want to recite or share
Mm.
with those that are watching right now and those that will watch this later?
Yeah, this is my favorite poem here. It's a James Baldwin poem. I can read it and then maybe explain a little bit why.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, so it's untitled by James Baldwin. So he says, Lord, when you send the rain, think about it, please, a little. Do not get carried away by the sound of falling water, the marvelous light on the falling water. I am beneath that water. It falls with great force, and the light blinds me to the light. I think that to me, when I think of this, it reminds me of a lot of things. But when he says, and the light blinds me to the light, I think that sometimes, especially in organizing, we get carried away we get distracted about the end goal. And sometimes we see the rain, and he says, and the light falling. I do not get carried away by the sound of the falling water, the marvelous light on the falling water. I think that sometimes, like, I don't know, we get distracted very easily. I think about our end goals, um, and sometimes the light of I think that sometimes we're tempted by systems. Sometimes systems will offer us positions of power. Sometimes they will put us up on a pedestal. I experienced this when I was in high school, where like I was the activist poster child. Look at this amazing person who like can speak like this and help us inform our work. And I think that sometimes that light blinded me to the actual light, of freedom, of revolution, of like love for my community. And I have to remind myself consistently that like, yeah, sometimes it is bright. Sometimes power is tempting, but so is the light. I think of like freedom. And yeah, it's like a consistent reminder, I think, to me to like stay focused in my organizing. And so I read that a lot. Um, it's a very beautiful poem. Yeah.
James Baldwin, what can we say, right? Like he was great at putting pen to paper. Um, it's now that people are realizing how much of a great author and writer and I would say critical scholar, right? Because you listen to some of his debates and interviews. um oh, did we lose Gashi? Are you still there? uh Gashi, are you still there? Gashi has been having some issues with her camera. Gashi shared a short stanza with us, James Baldwin. Uh, just trying to see if Gashi's back. No. Okay, so a short poetry stanza from one of James Baldwin's work. Oh, yep. Okay, hold on. We gotta get Gashi back. Are you back now? Hello, Gashi. Okay, while Gashi is trying to get back in, yeah, so we were okay there. Yes, yes, yeah.
Sorry.
I was like, we made it all the way to the end. And
Sorry. No.
no, it's good. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I was going to ask, can you share with the public some poets that they should read and that you would suggest? Because again, we just here we want to share information, right?
Yeah.
So if you can share a list of poets so that folks can order that book and read it, that would be good.
Yes. Uh, Audre Lorde is amazing. The greats, they're the giants like James Baldwin, Alice Walker. I think Revolutionary Petunias is a beautiful book. If anyone knows me and wants it, I can lend it to people for sure. um, and then I would also say like also poets that have informed my politics. Aimé Césaire is an amazing poet and like francophone. Yeah, he is a really amazing thinker, and has a lot of great poetry. Um, Toni Morrison used to write a lot of poetry too, which is good. Asada's poems are beautiful. I really love Sonia Sanchez. She has really short poems. They're very easy to understand. I think sometimes poetry becomes this like, I don't know, classical, confusing thing, but it doesn't have to be. And Sonia Sanchez has beautiful, beautiful poems. And so, yeah, and if anyone knows me or sees me and wants to borrow some books, I have like, you can just use me as a library for sure, because I have a lot. um, but yeah, I would say for people to start out, start with Sonia Sanchez because her poetry is amazing and easy to read. Yeah.
Okay, no, that's good. This is yeah, like those that know me, arts. I love the arts. Like it can be anything, music, theater. I love it because it's a way to inform things, and you can input information in there for people without doing a lecture or asking them to sit down and listen to you, right? Like it's easy, right? So I love the arts, and it's great that poetry can be one of those things that people use to kind of assess where they are, how they feel, and if they can connect it to their work, that's even good. So I'll give you the last word, and then I have one more thing to say, and then I guess that's it for episode 5.
Okay. Last word. Last word. I would say, yeah. Follow all of the work that is being done. Follow the Drop the Charges campaign, please, because we, like Black and Palestinian people, should not have to experience the brunt of the state's aggression, and because we deserve to be free. And Yeah, I think all of this work, as I've said many times, and I hope people understand, is grounded in a deep sense of love, of radical love for our community, and I hope that we honor the radicalness of our love every day. Um, yeah, interpersonally, um, when people are on the streets protesting, when people are yelling in the faces of cops or politicians or whatever, I hope people know that that's actually grounded in a sense of love, anger too, but I would say mostly love. Um, yeah, thanks for having me.
No, and I think we have to have you back, and it will be a session strictly on poetry,
Yes,
and then that way we can delve more into poetry, and also some of the work that will be happening in the future. So definitely we need to have you back, and big shout outs to you and everyone that works with you. Like I think when we as I said at the when we started, you know, black women, racialized women are carrying the city in ways that we would never know, right? Because sometimes you just don't know. So, um, just wanted to say big shout outs. Like, yeah, it's not about an individual, but then sometimes, we still have to congratulate and and let people know that these are some of the folks that are you know doing some of the heavy lifting. And I've shared this and I'll say it again. Without Freedom Camp, yes, there were things that happened in the past to address the housing crisis here and houseless folks. But without Freedom Camp, people wouldn't have understood how it's become a very, very critical issue. And there are other issues as well. I know if Sarah were here, she would have talked about how housing is when you're talking about people that live with disabilities, visible and invisible. Housing is huge,
Mhm.
and we don't do anything to address it. So there's more work to be done, more conversations, and thank you for your work, your time, your effort, pushing, everyone in the community, myself included. So yeah, I just wanted to say that because it's important that we do. So yeah, and next week, hopefully we can have Sarah Jama come back. But next week we also have, I think it's been confirmed, but I gotta say it anyways. But I think it's been confirmed. We're gonna have Kristen Richardson Jordan. Kristen Richardson Jordan just ran for city council in New York, and I'm going to read you a short bio, of a short bio. You can follow them on Twitter, at Kristen for Harlem. Harlem, third generation Black LGBTQ revolutionary on a mission to disrupt District 9 with radical love. Policy platform spells Harlem, leading grassroots funded. So next week we're gonna have Kristen Richardson Jordan and Sarah Jama. Hopefully Sarah can make it. That's gonna be, something that you don't want to miss. So that's you. Usually I don't tell people who the next person is going to be on the show, but this time I'm trying to do some pre-planning. So yeah, there you have it, folks. That's the outline for next week. And oh, we had a message from Tanya. Thank you both so much. So grateful for these conversations. Can't wait for more episodes. Yeah, the episodes are gonna come. Hopefully, I don't run out of steam. But yeah, next week we are back from 12 to 1 o'clock, and like I said, we'll possibly have Sarah and newly elect, or yeah, I think that's the term, newly elected uh council person, Kristen Richardson Jordan. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for spending 1 hour of your Sunday with us. And yeah, stay safe, show up for community, find out what's going on in your neighborhood, in your community. As Gashi mentioned, if you're out there, HS4J, Encampment Support Network, Roots to Justice, Defund HBS, and my last call, if you're watching, please, we need your donations.
Yep.
E-transfer to info@defundhbs.com, or you can go to the fundraising link. I'm going to put it up one more time, uh, right here. You can go there and donate. And so far, there've been 251 folks that have contributed to a grand total of 13,387, and the goal is 30K. So we still have a lots to go. So please, if you're watching, go and donate. Thank you very much, and thank you to all that have contributed so far. Okay, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. See you next week.